This is the new Bosch Cross Lite E Step-Thru. And really, it's kind of a mid-step frame right here. Pretty approachable, but a little bit stiffer and sportier than the real deep wave frames that Bosch offers. Love that it's got the mid-drive from Bosch. It's one of my favorite motors. The CX line is their high torque motor, often reserved for electric mountain bikes. Puts out up to 75 Newton meters versus 63 on the generic performance line. And now you can update the firmware to give you eMTB mode, which might not be necessary for urban commuting type riding that this bike seems geared for. But on the other hand, that's kind of a fluid, almost more like a torque sensor. It gives you low power or high power based more on how you're pedaling than on the level of assist. We'll get into that more later. But I thought that was really interesting. They've also upgraded the drivetrain. This used to be Shimano Deore. Now it's Deore XT, and it's got the Shadow Plus. This is a one-way clutch. See that gray thing? Locks in the up position, tightens your chain so it won't bounce around as much. I often see this cassette and this derailleur combination on mountain bikes because your chain bounces a lot, or speed pedelecs because you're going faster, and again, bouncing can happen. So the top speed on this bike is 20 miles per hour. It's not a mountain bike, and so I feel like it's a little bit over-spec'd here, and this probably does contribute to the slightly higher price point. I think the older one was $3,700. This one's $4,099. So you get 11 speeds instead of 10, you get an upgrade on the drive system, and you get the new Power Pack 500, 25% larger in terms of battery storage capacity than the 400. They've also swapped the fenders from plastic to aluminum alloy. These are really tough, tight. They're not going to rattle around a whole lot because you can see it on the rear rack. There's a connection point to the fender. So, you know, it's nice. This bike is really going to be a sporty, reliable, long distance, and tough commuter. Tapered head tube, 1.125 to 1.5 inch. Air fork with lockout. That's nice. Lighter weight, adjustable. You can raise or lower the air pressure depending on your body weight and what type of riding you're doing. Still have the same tires, really efficient Schwalbe Marathon Racer, and these have the Performance Line Race Guard, puncture protection, and light skin. That's that reflective sidewall stripe. These are 700C, so it's 28-inch wheel diameter, and I believe it's 1.5 diameter, so it's not as narrow as a road bike, so you get a little bit more traction and cushion, but it's still much more efficient than some of the 26-inch or the fat tire bikes that you see on beach cruisers, stuff like that. So just what I would expect. Definitely fits the type of riding that this bike seems to be set up for. I like that the fork blends in. They got the matching sticker here. Really kind of a beautiful frame. Satin black with bronze, or kind of reminds me of a makeup color, metallic. To me, this bike seems geared towards the professional woman. Guys could certainly take this bike, especially if you have maybe a lower inseam or shorter inseam, because it's easier to get on, especially if you have that rack loaded up to 25 kilograms. That's 55 pounds, and it has the iRack little clicker thing here, so you can click on their accessories. I don't see a lot of those in the United States. The cool thing is this is standard gauge tubing, so you can put a traditional pannier. It's got the blockers, and there's even, I believe this comes with a mini pump right there. I can't say for sure, but here's the rack attachment for it, so it would fit right there. Presta valves on the tires, so narrow, lightweight, road style kit. Integrated light. It says K1211. This might be from Fushan, the same company that makes the headlight. This does have adjustable angle. Both of them run off the main battery pack, so you don't have to worry about taking them off the bike, charging them, leaving them on. Big fan of that. And just being able to angle it and actually use it. This is useful. You could ride it in the rain, you could ride it in the sunshine, at night, in the morning, whenever, and it's going to handle just the elements. And it's going to, speaking of handling, turn well. It's going to lift well because of the weight, low, centered, just what you want. And that battery pack, maybe I should just take it off here. I want to mention that they're using ABUS locking core, and this card on the other side, there's a code, so you could actually send this in and get a matching folding lock to use with this. And if you did have that lock, you could put it in a bag or whatever, but they've even included bottle cage bosses here, so you could imagine a lock right here, or a water bottle, or a mini pump, or whatever. but that kind of gets in the way sometimes when you're stepping over the bike. So back to those trunk bag options. Those are often easy to Velcro on real quick, and then there's a handle on top and you take it with you along with that battery. So let's do this. Got the key. There we go. You can hear it click. Nice handle at the top. This is like 5.7 pounds, not super heavy considering how large it is. And it does have an LED indicator on the side so you can see how full it is, whether it's on the bike or not. You can charge it off the bike. That plug is the same as the plug that's on the side of the motor casing there. It does have a nice little cover, stays in place. A little bit better than some of their Brose powered e-bikes. Metal lip right there, so it's solid. You know, you can imagine taking this in, maybe lightening up the bike for if you're putting it on a car rack or something, storing this in a cool, dry location, charging it at the office or at home using that charger that we were looking at a minute ago. Now, once you've taken the battery off, you can pull the key out. There we go. Set this down. But when you're putting the pack back on, make sure that you hear it click down. And I've noticed that some of their bikes are really tight because they don't want the battery rattling around, and in fact the mounting plate is adjustable. But right now it looks like it's on, but I actually have to push quite hard. There we go, got it. Yeah, and this one might need a little bit of adjusting, but I do love how well integrated this is, the fact that it color matches with the motor case and everything, and the motor casing itself pretty compact. The Bosch CX motor, instead of being long and oval shaped, they're able to tip it up and integrate it into the frame. So it looks good and it just blends with the black. We've got internally routed cables here, so the bike starts to look more like a non-electric bike and maybe not attract as much attention, which I appreciate. So here is the charger. This is a 4 amp charger. A lot of e-bike chargers are only 2 amps, so it's gonna charge a little bit faster. Only weighs like a little bit over 1.5 pounds, and it's got the removable wall side there. It's a good setup. Easy enough to toss in my bag, or again, if you had a trunk bag. So I think that's it. You know, we've done a good walk around on the bike. I guess I missed the plastic chain cover, 170mm crank arms, the Welgo cage style pedals. I'm okay with those. Sometimes I replace them with bigger ones just because I like to have that traction, but those are nice and light. Hydraulic disc brakes from Shimano, 160mm in the rear, and a large 180 up front because that's where you do a lot of your stopping, and you can just feather it with these 2-finger adjustable reach levers. Gotta love that. Bell. While we're on the topic of removability, this display can come off. They've got theirs kind of locked on because I believe this was at a demo event, but it can swivel forward and back to reduce glare, and it's got an integrated micro USB port on the side. That puts out about 5 volts, 500 milliamps, and you can charge your phone or an additional light or music player, stuff like that. Not every bike has that option, so it's cool to see. And we've got a heavy kickstand positioned well out of the way of the left crank arm and near the disc brake mount, but not, you know, overwhelming this area. And in fact, you can see quick release on both wheels. So if you have to fix a flat or do some maintenance, you could take this into your shop, even a non-electric bike shop, and they're gonna be familiar with the parts. They're gonna be able to service the bike pretty well, which I appreciate. Okay, so let's turn it on. Just come up here to the display panel, press that power button for a moment. It comes to life very quickly, and that's the only step. Now we're pretty much ready to ride. It starts in off mode, so it's gonna work just like a traditional bicycle. You can switch gears, and I noticed that the trigger shifter over here, you can push forward like this, or you can pull back. So when you're holding the grip, you've kind of got like a pointer mechanism and a thumb mechanism, and it works very well. Anyway, coming back to the display, shows 5 little ticks, just like we had on the side of the battery. 20% increments is not great. I'd like to see a percentage or something, but it's good enough because there's actually a range estimator as well. Speed, miles per hour right now, but you could reset that and change it to kilometers by holding reset and I. We've got levels of assist and a little power chart that goes up and down depending on how hard the motor's working. You navigate through that using the plus and minus keys over here. Really easy to reach. You know, it's the kind of bike that over time you can feel it. You can feel there's a rubber bumper here, the I button, and then a plus and a minus, and there's a click. So you know something's happening even if you're not looking down. You're probably got your eyes on the road, hopefully, maybe dealing with traffic. So that's kind of it. That's the real bread and butter. But down here you might notice max speed. We can press this I button here or here to cycle through some different trip stats, like average speed, trip time, range, I'll come back to that, odometer, trip distance clock. So now I'm going to go back to range. Range is really cool because it dynamically estimates how far the bike can go based on how much battery remains. We're pretty full right now. Based on what level of assist we're in. Tour. Okay, that's one step up from the bottom. I actually ride in that most frequently. And then how you've been riding. So I'm 135 pounds. I've been riding a little bit of wind today, but for the last mile or two, the bike's been listening. It's been sensing me, and now it's estimating, okay, you can probably go 42 miles with, you know, how the bike is set up right now and how you're riding it. But if I arrow down to eco, it jumps all the way up to 81. So that's, I mean, that's impressive. And part of it is because of those efficient tires, this rigid frame, especially if I locked out the suspension, reduced some bobbing. Very nice. And on the other side, if I go all the way up to turbo, perhaps I'm climbing or something, 25 miles. That's still not bad. 25 miles per charge. Part of that's due to the higher capacity battery pack. So yeah, I think that's it. And then the light button, of course, that's going to activate the little icon, turn on our rear light. Looks like we've got a couple LEDs in there and some light pipes. And then that headlight with some nice reflective surfaces. This is very cool. Very cool. Oh, and I should say the Cellular Royale saddle, pretty comfortable, a little bit more squishy, but still narrow, so when you pedal, you're not going to chafe your thighs. Let's go ahead and stow the kickstand and do a little bit of riding here. Doop. Okay. I'm all mounted up. I'm going to start pedaling, and I'm going to do it in tour mode. As I pedal, the bike's going to measure the rear wheel speed, my pedal cadence, how fast I'm pedaling, and how hard I'm pushing. So it's very dynamic. And if I choose to shift gears, it listens for that too, and it eases off motor power so you don't mash the chain, the sprockets, that kind of thing. So this is a very smart e-bike. Part of the reason it costs a little bit more. And it's super fast too. When I'm pedaling, you can see the power meter we talked about earlier. It doesn't feel like there's a delay at all from when I start pedaling to when the motor kicks in. I mean, there is a little bit of a delay, but it's hardly noticeable. And when I stop pedaling, the same is true. Never feels like, whoa, the bike's out of control, it's taken off without me. And, you know, coming back to these nice disc brakes, you really feel like you're in control. Okay, I've attached the camera to the seat post, and I wanted to let you know it's 31.6 millimeters because this would be one of the parts that you could swap out if you wanted to improve the comfort. They make a number of suspension seat posts that they take the edge off, given that this is a hardtail and the tires are a bit more narrow. Anyway, I'm going to start riding. Keep an eye on the chain. Note when I stop pushing and when the chain stops, because that's the motor stopping as well. I'm going to shift through the gears, and you can see that, you know, hopefully there's not a lot of mashing and banging because of that shift detection. Pretty quick, and I was easily able to reach 20 miles per hour and even beyond that, and then you'll notice that the motor sort of fades out. Given that this is a mid-step design, there's a tiny bit of frame flex, but it's a lot less flexy and just heavy feeling than the really low step wave frames. I weighed this bike earlier, 49.5 pounds. Not too bad, maybe even a little bit lighter than the older one, despite having a higher battery capacity. Okay, nice stop there, one-handed. The cool thing about this frame is that it feels a little bit more upright than some of the other bikes. You can see that I'm having no problem reaching out, got those ergonomic grips, heads up. This is a more comfortable body position, at least for me, even though the frame is fairly sporty. Part of that is because I'm on the smaller 45 centimeter frame, but it does come in 2 additional sizes, a medium and a large. So you can dial this in and really get the fit right. This is a 90 millimeter standard stem, but you can see the angle, it's angled up a little bit more. This is something that could be shortened. You could get a shorter stem, even steeper angle if you wanted, bring the bars back, but they're riser bars. So the whole geometry of this bike is a little bit more comfortable, even though it's an active electric bike. I think that's it. I appreciate the updates they've made. They've definitely stepped up the drive system, the battery capacity, and even the drivetrain on the Bosch Cross Lite E Step-Thru. For the full write-up on this, including some measurements I've done, all the specs and everything, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun, ride safe.